All right, folks, what's happening? Happy Friday, everybody. Hope everybody's getting ready for a roaring and fun weekend. We're finally back on the podcast, Chris. It's been so long since I saw you. I forgot what you look like. I forgot you were so devilishly handsome.
Let's not pretend you don't have a picture of me somewhere in your house.
I see your mom on the screen, so I'm gonna.
Look, she's looking forward to the podcast. She doesn't want any crude Gary talk. She wants serious journalism.
That's why she's looking forward to it. I want to say hi to everybody over there. Jeff Johnson, Jason TG Sponsor, and good to see you, Leanne Nolan, and who else we got over here? Make sure everybody else that you guys jumping in say hi. Ted Boyette, good to see you. I had a real issue tonight. I don't think we're going to see the comments from Rumble. I think something was going on with Rumble. The new way of linking it, which is really just clicking a button and it doing that, didn't do it. So I had to go back to the old way. So we're going through this weird RTMP streaming thing. So we probably won't see your comments on Rumble. I'll try to jump over there from time to time and check it out and see what's going on there. But good to be back. Good to have you back, Chris. Good to see you. Robert Cochran, good to see you. I'm looking forward to Chris educating me and updating me on the current events because, folks, I have not been doing current events. As a matter of fact, about 40 minutes ago, I was shooting a video that I wasn't expecting to shoot today, and then I had to come back here and create the podcast and get it going. So looking forward to that. All right, Chris, catch us up. What did we miss?
All right. Well, I haven't been fully observing the news too much. I mean, a little bit more than Gary, thankfully. So we've still got some show to put together, but I haven't been in as deep as I have been before. So you have to bear with it. We'll have sort of just a casual catch up of some of the news. I've sort of taken note of some of the events in the Middle East with Yemen and Iran and Israel. There's a lot going on over there.
Well, let's start right there. What's your feeling about us attacking the Houthis like we have? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think you should be doing it. I think it's not for American shipping. Maybe it's for a general vague concept of freedom of navigation through the Red Sea or whatever. But really, it's for Israel. It's, the Houthis are causing problems for Israel. So there's America going, hey, we'll back up Israel. But as you've seen, because the Houthis, they bombed the Israeli airport and Israel responded with a massive attack and they flattened the Yemeni airport or whatever. It seems Israel's more than capable of taking care of that problem itself. And it's related. They're bombing because of what Israel's doing in Gaza. They say they're blockading the sea. So Israel should deal with it. That's Israel's mess. I don't think America should be involved.
I don't disagree with that. Although I do like the idea of taking out small groups of terrorists before they grow larger. I don't know. I'm a little. I don't really care one way or the other on that.
Yeah, well, if you just look at the Trump's campaign for the past couple of months, it doesn't seem to have achieved too much. And they're still.
I do think I think Jeff is right. The Houthis have attacked American ships. Maybe I don't know how recently, but they have attacked American ships.
Yeah, they definitely did. They might have. See, because they had the ceasefire and they stopped, because they started bombing the thing and even Biden was attacking them. But when they had the ceasefire, and Trump helped with the ceasefire with Israel and Gaza, Yemen stopped. But when Israel, people can argue about it, but it seems like Israel sort of ripped up the ceasefire and they're just going to go in. And then they've stopped allowing all food in. That's when the Houthis said, all right, we're going to put the blockade back on. And I think straight away, almost like a week later, Trump said, all right, we're going to start attacking you. I don't think any American ships were hit within that week. They might have been hit in the previous run. And since America started bombing them, the Houthis at least have been bragging that they've been hitting American ships. I think they've been over-exaggerating how many American ships they've been having. But the Houthis have been saying, we attacked this ship, we attacked the USS Truman, we attacked this. And Yemen have been attacking American ships, but I don't think that's what America responded to. It's not like America this time around with Trump responded to an American ship getting hit. There was the potential that American ship probably would get hit eventually, but I think most of the hits came after.
There apparently was an attack on American ship on March 19th, 2025 this year, and there was another one. Here's a quick AI overview. The Houthis, a Yemeni rebel group, have made multiple claims of attacking American ships in the Red Sea, including the USS Harry Truman, with missiles and drones. These attacks are alleged to be in retaliation for U.S. strikes in Yemen. The Houthis have claimed multiple attacks on American ships, including the USS Truman, using missiles and drones. These attacks, it's repeating what it's at the top. The U.S. has responded to the Houthi claims by stating some of the attacks missed the target by significant distances. Ongoing conflict between the Houthis and the U.S. and its allies is fueled by the broader conflict in Yemen, which has led to the destabilization of the region and threats to international shipping. The Houthi attacks in the U.S. responses have raised concerns about further escalation of the conflict of the Red Sea and its impacting global trade and security. So
you said at the start there was an attack on an American ship on March something. Did you have the date? Because I think Trump started bombing them on March 15. It might have been after that.
March 19th.
Yeah, so that's 4 days after
Houthis
Trump.
attack American ships for fourth time. U.S. hits back in Yemen. I have to go through it. It pulled up a video when I clicked the link. So, I think the Houthis are, whether they realize it or not, like the perfect terrorist group for us to go after. Like we can pretty much strike them from remote locations and do significant damage to their infrastructure and capabilities. I'm okay with that.
I think they're a bit more mobile, though. I think America, Trump and Biden have had problems stopping the Houthis doing what they're doing. Because like Trump, they've basically made a ceasefire where the Houthis will continue as long as they don't hit American ships.
Yeah.
I think the way they are, they're quite mobile, and they can sort of shoot with smaller range stuff and then hide. I think it's kind of a bit more difficult to deal with them.
They're they're just kind of the typical asymmetric warfare group that is, a terrorist organization those are hard to pin down, right? We have to direct assets toward them. We probably don't have a lot of resources directed at, the Houthis. And we have a lot of other problems going on in the world. There's still a lot of right-wing terrorists running around the U.S. that haven't been brought to justice for January 6th. So we got to make sure that the FBI, the CIA are directing assets accordingly and taking care of the real problems here in the world. But yeah, so, again, being a terrorist organization and, until you put troops in the ground and, or you really put a lot of assets, directed their way. And I don't think, from what I've seen too, I don't think the U.S. takes them very seriously.
They're no threat to America, really.
No.
So a lot of people in the comments, of course, I'm the soft one. I don't want to bomb people or whatever. That's a sign of weakness or whatever. But hey, what about Trump? Okay, Trump agrees with me. Trump just made a ceasefire deal with the Houthis. He ain't bombing them anymore. All right. So he's calling me soft. He's calling Trump soft. All right.
He did kill the shit out of him first, though. He did start off with that.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. He's a little bit tougher than me. All right.
What Lori is referring to is every man should have carrots and sticks. And if you only have carrots, then what are you going to do? That's how diplomacy works. That's how everything works. You got to have carrots and sticks. Like, my wife, if, I give her lots of carrots, but, this gets weird. And she's right there. So anyways, the point being is to train any group, any person or anything else and get them to do what you need them to do. You got to have carrots and sticks. If you're just full of carrots, you're just a rabbit or something, Chris.
Look, I understand that. We've had the sticks. It's time for a bit of carrot action.
The next thing you know, you've been taken over by the emus.
Look, they never actually won. Okay, we couldn't wipe them out, but they never took over government. They never established the new emu republic or anything like that.
You just dumped off a truckload of carrots to them, and now there's a ceasefire.
Yeah. Hey, it works. We coexist with the emu. You can coexist with the Houthi with the carrot approach.
Georgia has a good question here. Is this a sign of strategic confusion, or are we missing a tactical objective, chasing Iranian proxies while the admin simultaneously seeks to negotiate with Iran? Looks illogical at first look. I think, I think it's letting Iran And this again, this is seriously another one of those diplomacy and discussions about sticks and carrots. It's like, hey, look, dude, we understand that you're funding the Houthis and all these other folks, and we're just going to kill them, or we can come to the table and negotiate. Like that, the problem with diplomacy and diplomats in general is they don't understand what gives them the power to work the way that they do, right? The whole point to them is to be the carrot, but they get so stuck in that mode that they don't understand the importance of like a little bit of military might and flexing those muscles a little bit. I mean, that's the only reason the world takes us as seriously as they do. It really is. Yeah, we have a lot of economic might, and I think Trump's been the first one to actually use that. But we've had several administrations or policies in this country where it's either one or the other. We've been weak economically, using the levers that we have available to us to influence people through economic means, and to be tough with countries that are basically getting over on us. And it's either all we're left with is military might, and then we go off and then we bully countries like Iraq, Syria. Like our strategic goals have made zero sense actually in the last 25, 30 years, and probably going back even further really since Vietnam.
Yeah, I think Iran might have helped the Houthi deal sort of happen. And yeah, I imagine, Trump's trying to negotiate with Iran. It's probably better not to be, well, to sort of go, like carrot and the stick. It's been a lot of stick action before, like with the Houthis. I think they moved some aircraft carriers close to the region, sort of facing them, but also sort of assigned to Iran. And Trump said all these kind of things like basically every Houthi attack we'll take it as a Iran attack, which could be a bit dangerous, but it might work if it's temporary. But then he sort of pulls that back. Okay, we'll have a deal with the Houthis, and then we'll talk to you. And Iran knows in the background we have all this destruction that's we're more than capable of. So hopefully, look, as long as they come up with some kind of a deal, but that's another issue too with what the deal will be with Iran, whether they can enrich uranium for a domestic purpose. I don't think Iran will want to give that up, but America, it seems like, definitely Israel, doesn't want any uranium enrichment whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree with them on that. Hold on real quick. Keep the masses.
Yeah, I figured. I figured Gary would probably agree with the. Oh, look, it makes sense. I understand that they'd want that. But it just seems a bit funny with America with the nukes. Yeah, America's got the nukes. America has used the nukes. Israel has the nukes. They don't even admit they have the nukes. They don't allow inspections. And these two countries are going to dictate to Iran, look, you're a bad country. We're allowed to have nukes. Israel can have secret nukes, but you can't even have a civilian nuclear program. I just don't know how they can really, other than through military might, I don't think there's a moral case for that.
Well, they can't do anything. It's the U.S. doing, again, at the end of the day, and I know people try to get this switched around, but at the end of the day, if we're talking about proxies, like Israel is the U.S. proxy. And I know we like to push, or the Jewish myth out there is that Israel runs the U.S. I think there's lots of policies that would say otherwise. Sure, you can cherry pick some things that might bolster that argument, whether it's the idea that Netanyahu convinced us to go to war with Iraq and all these other things. I think we convinced ourselves to go to war with Iraq. I think that people saw a lot of different benefits politically, militarily, monetarily. Sure, we got Bibi up there to make a pretty strong case. And I think...
But he also had some of his people, like Douglas Feith and a few of those others, that actually worked for Netanyahu, and they wrote the Clean Break memo, which basically talked about toppling Iraq. And they actually were in the Bush administration having a lot of influence. I forget all the names, Douglas Feith, and there are a couple of them. They did that Office of Special Plans coming up with the fake intelligence. They were sort of Israeli...
I agree with that. I don't think that there's any argument that we're not influenced by Israel, but I think we also influence Israel a lot too.
For sure. Yeah, America's
we clearly have a very special relationship with Israel, whether you like it or not. And personally, I like it. I like the fact that with that being said, Netanyahu is a hell of a salesman. And I think it was strategic on the U.S.'s part. I think there was a lot of people behind the scenes that had made the decision that we were going to go to war with Iraq. Whether that was also influenced by Israel at the beginning of this or not, or that was the initial, like, who knows, who cares? The fact is our own leaders decided that we were going to Iraq. And I also think that they knew that, we could get Netanyahu up there in front of Congress and make a strong case. And he did. He made a very compelling case. I remember watching that. Here I am. I had just joined the military at that point, and I'm like, man, let's go. Look, I remember that entire presentation that he gave on that. So
democracy was going to spread through the region. He said heaps of things which are totally wrong, basically.
Mm-hmm. And it was our own intel agencies that were saying that they had weapons of mass destruction. And look, I was with the initial push into Iraq. There was a lot of things going on. There was a lot of there was convoys and things like that heading out of the country. I'm not convinced that there wasn't weapons of mass destruction, but I am 100% convinced that regardless if there was weapons of mass destruction or not, I don't think Iraq was going to use those on the U.S. We're kind of talking about the same thing with Iran. Like, we can't necessarily use that as a predicate for war. They're a sovereign country. If they want to make weapons of mass destruction, they can. And most countries have weapons of mass destruction, at least up to the point of a nuke. And today the idea that we would say, hey, you know what, we're gonna invade, I don't know, pick a country, and because they have weapons of mass destruction, because they have nerve gas or biological agents or bombs up to it, but not including a nuclear weapon. I mean, that just doesn't even make sense, and it wouldn't even pass the smell. The only time it would make sense is post 9/11. That's the only time that would ever be sold, and they did. They took advantage of that, and they did. Iran, though, I do feel like is a genuine threat to the U.S., and I do feel like what we're dealing with is a terrorist regime. With that being said, I'm also aware that we've been subjected to a lot of propaganda, about Iran. I don't know how much is true, but I have met several, Iranians that are now Americans or have lived in America for a long time, and they seem to feel the same way about the current regime. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think they should get a nuclear weapon for sure.
Yeah, I would want that to happen. But, in a way, like America's actions in the Middle East and even Israel having a nuclear weapon, that would be the drive. That would be their reason for it. Probably same with North Korea. North Korea is probably watching America whack out all these countries. The one security thing you can have that will, give you a better chance not to get invaded would probably be to get nuclear weapons. So I think Iran's basically at a point where they're not currently moving towards nuclear weapons, but if they wanted to, they can get nukes very quickly. I've heard about a week or so. But they are not doing that final week. But it's only a week. So it's sort of this tense situation. But they're not actually moving closer towards a nuke. But when they want to.
Well, why do you say that?
I've heard that. I'll have to double check. I've heard that from a few different sources. I think I even watched the Tulsi Gabbard. You remember her confirmation hearing? She was saying that they're not working on this, but they're very close. I forget that there's a name for it. There's a name for they're sort of, they could make the final push if they want, but there's no evidence they're on that
I think
push. And if they were, they probably would have nukes already.
Well, I think it'd be extremely naive to think that they don't have nukes already. I think they do have nukes already. I think they would have absolutely all the work that they've been doing. I think they absolutely have their own top secret programs where they've probably have already developed nuclear bombs. Now, have they had a chance to test them? Have they had a chance to put them on ballistic missiles? Have they had a chance to further weaponize them in a way that would be actually usable? Probably not. But I think 100%, I think it'd be stupid to believe that they don't. I mean, that's why they've been enriching uranium. To the idea that they don't have nuclear weapons or the capability of nuclear weapons, like right now, I think that's naive.
Well, I haven't really heard anyone sort of argue that they're at that point yet.
Well,
And I think it does sort of make sense. You're enriching lots of uranium, so they're at that sort of point, and almost that's their deterrence. They don't quite have a nuclear deterrent, but they have the deterrent that like if you come for us, we can get a nuke in a week. I think that's at the point that they're at, and that's why they're enriching a lot, and they're pretty close to it. But I think they're sort of, I forget exactly all the technical terms, but I remember watching something that seemed to make a big
have a nuke in a week. I'm not sure that we're saying anything different from one another. I guess, like I said,
yeah.
The reality is you can build all the nukes you want, but the other thing you have to do is you have to test them. And then the other thing that you have to do is you have to make them to where you can actually put them on a ballistic missile. I mean, just making a nuclear bomb, as if we go back to, our bombs that we dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it was a long time before we were able to take, this big dumb bomb that we dropped, Little Boy and Fat Man, right? If we take those and then we actually put them on the ends of ballistic missiles and actually have the capability of delivering them over far distances, I think that's a difference. But the other thing too is they have been simultaneously been developing ballistic missile technology as well. And I think there was a report several years ago where they said they had the technology to actually take a ballistic missile and reach the U.S. with it. So those things are going hand in hand. And I'd still, again, I think it's clear because we would know, and maybe they haven't, and it just hasn't been released to the public, but maybe they haven't tested them, but I think they have them ready to go. I mean, I think a country that's been enriching uranium for as long as they have, and let's not pretend that they're from the Stone Ages. I mean, Iran is a fairly sophisticated country. I think I can't find a reason why they wouldn't have nuclear weapons, to be honest with you. That's my point. And I think we would still have government officials and they may know that they have nuclear weapons. They're not going to tell the U.S. people, especially not under the Biden administration. Like the Biden administration was trying to project all the strength, all this other stuff. I think they absolutely had plenty of opportunity to get nuclear weapons under the Biden administration. I mean, the Ayatollah could have called Biden himself. It's like, hey, I got nuclear weapons. And Biden wouldn't share that information. He wouldn't even know what to do with it. He know it'd make him look weak. So that information, intelligence may already exist, but it's just not released publicly. And why would it be?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's possible, but I don't know. That is a big step for Iran to take. And I'm not sure.
I mean, what would we do about it? Especially under the Biden administration. Forget the Trump administration. I think if we had the last 4 years under the Trump administration, there's less likely of a chance that they would have a nuclear weapon. But under the Biden administration, what would we do about it? We would do nothing. We would do nothing. I mean, Biden, both under Obama and Biden, there was a lot of funding that was opened up to the Iranians. They were all carrots. They've been nothing but carrots for them. So, I think there's like a 98% chance that Iranians have nuclear weapons, and they're not going to brag about it. Why do they need to? They don't need to tell anybody about it. They got them. They got them.
Yeah, it's possible. I hadn't even really thought of that. But there's no way.
Dan's got this correct. Chris, when we learn, Gary's always right. Like, just go back to that. I did want to address that. Georgie brought up this question, and I'll let you say your piece on it.
Sorry, I missed that. Were you going to do something before I said my piece, or do I say my piece?
No. I was saying Georgie brought this up. I'll let you answer it first.
Oh yeah, I get you. Yeah. The Houthis. Because there's a lot there, because we're sort of talking about. Before we come back to that, I loaded up. There's some story about an Iranian extra site that they've found. I think the timing's. I'm suspicious of all this. To me, there has been a lot of propaganda for like decades and decades of propaganda against Iran. And you'd have plenty of people in Iran that don't like the regime. I'm sure you could find plenty of people from Russia that come here and they're like, yeah, Putin sucks, he's got to go, or whatever. But that doesn't, I just think there's a lot of propaganda for this war in Iran. Powerful people have wanted it for decades. So when we get stuff like this,
I agree with that.
I think we just have to be skeptical of all of this. So, we've just got new satellite images of a secret Iranian nuclear weapons facility.
Oh, look at that! I predicted. I even know
Explosive data.
Yeah, but I don't think the old Fox News people are always too accurate. But we'll see. I'll just play it.
Oh, that's true.
Fox News exclusive satellite images revealing the location of a previously unknown Iranian nuclear site. Now, the facility spans nearly 2,500 acres, and this is a big discovery. Jillian Turner has more from the State Department. Good morning, Jillian.
Pretty explosive.
Hey,
it was built during the Biden administration, I'm sure.
Yeah, but who knows? It's probably like medicine for like sick children. Maybe, probably not. But you know, who knows what it actually is.
So, Dana, these satellite images that we have obtained exclusively show the alleged site location and even the layout of the secret, previously unknown nuclear weapons facilities inside Iran. This, of course, raises fresh concerns about the regime.
So, first of all, this is not previously unknown. I guarantee you the intelligence community has known about this for a really long time. Now, they're strategically releasing this information. Like the CIA, the NSA, and every other intelligence agency doesn't sit there and pour over satellite photos like, oh, guess what, guys? We just found another, nuclear facility. Hey, somebody call up Fox News and Jillian Turner and make sure that we have that on tonight. That's not how this works. They've known about this for a long time, and for whatever reason, they decided it is in their interest to release this information to Fox News. But this is probably, it's probably decades old or whatever else. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because they show a few pictures, and you can't really see too much. And then they say we also have short video. We also have videos, but they're too long to show here. So they don't. So they apparently have videos, but they don't show any of them. Which I just find the whole thing very suspicious, and
Sure.
I take it all with a grain of salt.
Regime's role in these ongoing nuclear talks with the Trump administration. The National Council of Resistance of Iran has collected intelligence from sources on the ground inside Iran that locate this nuclear weapons facility in what is called Semnan province, far from the regime's already known nuclear sites. It's codenamed the Rainbow Site by Iran's officials, and it spans nearly 2,500 acres. It's been operating, as far as we can discern, for over a decade under the cover of a chemical production company that's called Diba Energy Siba. The so-called rainbow site's reportedly being used primarily to extract tritium. It is a material that's used to boost nuclear weapons with no real civil or commercial applications, putting paid to Iran's long-standing claim they just want nuclear power for peaceful purposes.
Isn't the U.S. position that Iran can have an enrichment program as long as it doesn't reach a weapons?
We haven't made that decision yet. We will.
I'll pause there because that's an important point too, because that Steve Witkoff, he went on TV and said something to the effect of Iran doesn't need to enrich more than 3% that's needed for civilian nuclear enrichment. And
right.
a lot of people in Israel, they sort of flipped out over that because they were basically saying, I guess that's what the limit was under the Obama deal. And they took it as if, like, Witkoff saying they don't need any more than that, as if they should be out, they could maybe do that, but no more, which would be quite similar to the Iran deal. You get mixed messages from America, but a few things did sort of seem like, yeah, maybe the new deal will basically be quite similar to the Obama deal, where they can still enrich uranium only up to that small point. But then I saw other people saying maybe that was taken out of context. He wasn't sort of saying they should be allowed to have 3%. He's just making the point that because they're up at 60% or something, that shows they're not doing it for civilian purposes. He wasn't actually saying they should be allowed to have 3%. But it's still a bit of an unknown thing here, whether or not America will allow Iran to have any civilian nuclear enrichment. And he's just said there, we haven't made that decision yet. So
well, I mean, this is the same nonsense that we were told with North Korea. I mean, this is the exact same song and dance, and the entire time, they were making nuclear weapons, and the next thing you know, they're testing one. So, I think that ship has sailed. I think that I think they probably have had nuclear weapons for probably 5 years or so. Now, I think they're probably still continuing to advance those and make them better, make them smaller, more powerful, all the things that we've done through our evolution of the use of nuclear weapons. So, I mean, I think that ship has sailed, and I think the American government knows it too.
Well, if the ship has sailed, how about this? How about Iran gives up their nuclear weapons, and Israel gives up their nuclear weapons, and then we're all happy. You know, how about that?
I'd be fine with that, but
me too. I don't think
either you nor I dictate what Israel's going to do, or Iran's going to do, for that matter.
Yeah, I don't think there's much chance of. Definitely Israel wouldn't be happy with that. I don't even think America would be too happy with that. But we'll finish this thing, but then I'll come to the other things I want to talk about, because we're talking about the relationship with America and Israel and how it works or whatever. But yeah, because there's some interesting things where there's a bit of tension. Trump and Netanyahu, they aren't. Maybe there's a little bit of trouble in paradise. I've found some interesting stories there. We'll come to after this clip about the Iran supposed threat.
But we haven't made that decision yet.
Just yesterday, the vice president insisted that the nuclear negotiations with Iran are going swimmingly. Take a listen.
So, without prejudging the negotiations, I will say so far so good. We've been very happy by how the Iranians have responded to some of the points that we've made.
Dana, once again, so this intelligence, these aerial satellite photos, plus some video that little too long to share with you guys on the air, were shared exclusively with Fox News. It was obtained by sources operating on the ground inside Iran, given to us by Iran's opposition movement here inside the United States. Pretty explosive.
Yes. All right. Jillian Turner, thank you for that, and we will track it.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make of that, but I think it's just noise for the background of the big threat of Iran. And yeah, because Trump's basically said we got to make a deal, or basically we'll bomb them. That's essentially what he's sort of been saying over the past couple of months, which I find a bit worrying. I'm a bit worried about where that might go, because, you know, because a lot of people are complaining that Trump might just redo the Obama deal, like I was sort of saying before. Maybe they might allow them to enrich some uranium or whatever. But from Iran's perspective, I know we don't like doing this or whatever, but from Iran's perspective, they had a deal with America. America ripped it up and walked away with it. They walked away from it. And now America's coming back, and they're going to be like, all right, you can't have any civilian nuclear program. And Iran, as some sort of self-respecting sovereign country, would be like, well, why not? Like, why can't we have that? So if they push for a deal harder than that, I don't think it's going to happen. So I think the best thing you can hope for is the Obama deal that everybody hated.
Well, as someone that doesn't always see America as the problem, or Israel and the Jews as the problem, I would point to the fact that when we're talking about Iran, we also don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Here's what I remember about lots of deals that we made with Iran, is that we also had nuclear inspections that they didn't give us access to. They also had additional secret sites that they didn't tell us about during these deal periods. So to sit here and pretend that, you know, it was the U.S., like, we don't know what else was going on behind the scenes. Like, for all we know, we had, you know, U.S. intelligence find out they actually had nuclear weapons already, and so they ripped up the deal. I don't know that to be true, and again, the problem is that it wouldn't be in the U.S.'s benefit to admit that, because we've had this hard line with Iran, and it wouldn't be in Iran's benefit to go to the public and say, hey, look, we just tricked the U.S., because Iran, at the end of the day, is still reliant upon the U.S. giving them access to the rest of the world as far as economic trade. Like, we have a lot of power and influence over them economically. So, like, Iran is, and I am very careful I try not to project my own morals on another country or another people or anything else. And there's a lot of, like, there's a lot of countries that most people would say, hey, that's evil dictatorship, blah, 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 blah. Like, Iran definitely falls in that category. I think they're about as evil as they get. They are very radical as far as the government goes. And I think we have a large population within the country that's also radicalized. So, you know, that's how I feel about Iran. I think the world would be a better place, a safer place, a more stable place without Iran.
Yeah, well, because I was under the impression, because every time I've looked it up, it's like I just get, you know, just then, GPT, did Iran abide by the Obama deal? And it's basically like, yes, for the most part.
Oh, well,
IAEA verification.
That's so.
Well, I've seen that basically everywhere I've looked. Every time I've tried to look it up, it's like, yes, they were supposed to do inspections and they did them, and they were supposed to limit this and they did it, and they were supposed to do all this.
There was
Trump.
plenty of times where Iranians didn't allow inspectors to access a lot of things. I'm going to look this up right now.
All right.
And you can keep talking about, you can keep spewing your Iranian propaganda.
All right, what else say? Damn with America. No, I'm kidding. What was I going to say?
Here we go.
Yeah, because
here's your AI. Since we're doing the battle of AI. Yes, Iran has restricted access to the International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors, including the barring of several designated inspectors. This move, described as unprecedented and very serious blow by the IAEA, has hindered the agency's ability to monitor Iran's nuclear program effectively. So, I mean, these things have been going on, but for some reason we only remember when the United States says this is a bullshit deal. And look, Obama was like an Iranian apologist. I mean, if that guy had done as much for the United States as he did for Iran, we'd be in a much better place. There's no doubt about it.
Look, as I said, I've said before, I was happy with the Obama deal. I don't want war with Iran if they're going to limit it with the Obama deal. And look, you can probably find a couple of instances where they didn't allow something in here. But basically every source that you look, like even if you try in the same GPT AI thing you're looking at, like, you
don't need AI. I have a memory. Like I remember all these news stories coming up all the time, and it was even
like
during
Fox News propaganda.
Even during the Obama administration. I remember that, and they were like, "Obama, what are you going to do?" And he just kept giving them more money and sending them billions.
Exactly. That's it. Like giving them, he's not giving them. Like there was a lot of propaganda with all of that. Like the idea, like America basically stole Iran's money, and they eventually gave it back. That's what happened. You know
what? When you take American hostages, you kind of go on a list, and we can take your money if we want to. F you.
Well, a few decades
but
down the road.
And here's some of the heartburn that I think that I don't forget about, that I think most people do, is like Iran is directly responsible for thousands of American lives in Iraq. Like all the EFP bombs that were destroying our MRAPs and everything else, and we're killing thousands of Americans and maiming even more. Like those were Iranian. And during the Obama administration, which was during, like, we did not see that pre 2008. They might have been trickling in here and there, but after 2008, like Iran had pretty much free reign in Iraq because we were not pushing back on Iranian involvement. They were training people. Like this is all intelligence that I had on the ground that we were dealing with. Like we knew Iran was coming through, pushing funds, pushing money, pushing people, pushing trainers. We were literally watching on satellites as Iraqi insurgents were going over to Iran, getting trained up, and then coming back in convoys, bringing weapons and everything else. Like that is something that I think that Iran should be held responsible for. I really do. So, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to push back on that too hard because obviously that's horrible if American troops getting hit or whatever. But if you're saying Iran should face accountability for that,
you have a disagreement on that. I mean, I just like the fact is that there's this thing where we want to pretend that if we just left Iran alone, that everything would be fine in the world. And that's not true. Out of all the countries that we deal with, I don't care if we're talking about North Korea. North Korea is a terrible, evil state. But most of what they inflict on the world is on their own people. Like Iran has been trying to influence at a global scale for a really long time by, with, and through terrorism, not through any other means. It has always been terrorism. Whether we're talking about Hezbollah, whether we're talking about the Houthis, whether we're talking about, you name it, they've been involved in the Middle East. If there's terrorism involved, you could almost guarantee that Iran is behind it.
Yeah, but just with that saying that Iran should be held accountable for, causing harm to American soldiers in Iraq. I mean, what about the argument that America should be held accountable for invading Iraq and invading Afghanistan and all these other countries?
I think at least within our own country that we should. With that being said, Like, we weren't attacking Iran, and even if they thought it was a predicate for it, but they were actively killing our people left and right. And so if we respond by freezing funds that we have access to, and I don't even remember where that money came from, it doesn't really matter to me. But the fact is that anytime that we send money to Iran, it is going, and you literally see it like, oh, all these billions go to Iran. Suddenly, Iran has a lot of terrorist activities going on. Suddenly, all these terrorist organizations now have funds, now have bombs, now are attacking Israel and every other place. Like, there's a direct correlation between every time that they've had a money dump and the increase in terrorism around the Middle East.
Yeah, I can't really see Iran as the sort of the main antagonist of this thing that we need to clamp down on. Like, the Middle East is more their area than America's, and I think America should just pull out. Iran, sure, they're a threat to Israel. I think it's more of an Israel problem. They're not a threat to America unless America's over there.
Yeah, but we also have a lot of allies and other agreements that we've committed to that those relationships are very beneficial to us. So I mean, there's those responsibilities and commitments that we have in the Middle East as well. It's not just Israel. I mean, and it's not just Israel that's been on the receiving end of terrorist activity because of Iran. There's a lot more. The fact is that they're a globally destabilizing country that engages in terrorism. Like, that's like, I don't think that we as a world should tolerate that. And that's probably.
I would just argue, I think America's been more destabilizing, and you don't call it terrorism because you have more sophisticated weapons, and
Sure,
you can vote for it in your. Well, yeah, I mean, you don't really vote for it in your Congress or whatever, but I just don't think America really has the right, after all the history in the last few decades in the Middle East, to be like, look, this country can't do this, and we've got to tell them to do this. It's like, can you guys just chill for a while? Can you focus somewhere else for a little while? I think the America and the Middle East footprints.
I can see that point to some extent, but at the same time, like, I can't get away from principally. You're right. I agree with that, but I also can't get away from the fact that I truly believe that if we let Iran have a nuclear weapon, if we allowed Iran to become more powerful, I think we will see something that's much greater, a negative effect, not only in the Middle East, but also us end up getting dragged into wars and or possibly terrorist attacks on our own country, or by God, even Australia. I think that is a pretty easy trajectory to predict. And again, I agree with you that our credibility in the Middle East is shot, but at the same time, it's like, just because you accidentally punished one of your kids when they didn't really do anything doesn't mean you just let them run amok forever and always question yourself, oh, you know what? I can never punish him again. No, like, you still got to keep some things in check, and you got to keep a balance of power going on, both in the Middle East and the rest of the world, for that matter.
Yeah, I hear that. I just don't think Iran's sort of this big threat in a vacuum, like a lot of people think. I think it's sort of reacting to this, the American-Israeli influence that's all around them. I mean, they're kind of surrounded.
So I don't disagree with that to some extent, but I also think that I don't think it's just a reaction to the things that we do. I think that Iran has its own, objectives that they want to achieve, and I think those objectives are not aligned with the rest of the world or what we would see as reasonable. So I don't think that. I mean, we can take a lot of blame, and we can even blame some on Israel. But at the end of the day, like, what does it even matter? Like, Israel doesn't directly affect Iran. Like, Iran has been messing in the Middle East when it comes to Israel for a really long time. And I'm not talking about just they're directly responsible for a lot of people getting killed. Like if Iran wanted to isolate themselves and just, Iran be Iran, they could have done that a long time ago, but they've continued to antagonize through terrorism, nonetheless, the rest of the Middle East and the United States.
I don't think, because Israel, I mean, at least recently they've been assassinating people and they've been bombing Iran and doing all that kind of stuff. And I don't think they've been like completely hands off beforehand. I mean, they've probably been lobbying America to bomb Iran for the last few decades. So they're definitely a threat to Iran. It's not like poor old Israel sitting there minding its own business and this evil Iran's sort of attacking it for no reason.
Whoa. You don't think that Iran has been antagonizing, attacking, and threatening Israel for no reason? You think that Israel has given them a lot of
enemies?
What's that? I understand
enemies,
but who decided they were enemies? It was Iran deciding that Israel was the enemy long before. It wasn't just Israel like went over there and started bombing people or destroying.
Yeah, but then that goes back to like Israel moved in and the whole place thought Israel was the enemy because they were the invader or whatever, like they were the
agree, but that
immigrants or whatever.
That is like, well, they moved in. All right, well, it's free game now. We can start getting, sending bombs and everything else. I understand that they didn't like that situation, but that is not a justification for what they've done. And then Israel has the right to protect themselves because, again, publicly, Iran constantly states death to Israel, death to the United States. Like, that's a problem.
I mean, Israel always says the Iran regime's got to go. Like, it just can't. So they, even just with that, that's a similar kind of existential threat just by Israel saying that regime has to go. And I'm sure they're working, probably helping the Iranian opposition. I mean, I'm just sort of guessing here. I don't really have any. They'd be doing heaps of stuff.
They'd be foolish not to.
And I think that's why Iran's doing its thing where they got their proxies, they got their ballistic missiles, they got their somewhat nuclear deterrent, and they're all sort of their weaponry against Israel. And, I don't think it's, I just would rather America sort of stay out of it. Just like with the Yemen thing, like I'm happy with that. Israel's really not happy with that. They sort of think America's selling them out or whatever. But they should do the same thing with the rest. Like Israel, do your own thing. You either make peace with your neighbors or you go to war with your neighbors. It's sort of up to you. But we ain't going to be here to back you up. Like when Israel did those plans, they were supposed to be bombing Iran this month. They already had the plans written up 2 months ago, and they factored in America, which to me speaks to the arrogance of Israel. It's just, we'll do a war plan to bomb Iran, and we'll get America to bomb this one, and we'll get America to bomb this one, and boom, 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 boom. But luckily, Trump rejected that deal.
So I don't think that's how it works. I think when Israel's coming up with these plans, they're working in coordination and collaboration with the United States to number one, develop those plans, and number two, most of those plans that they come up with aren't going to work without our backing. And quite frankly, I think anytime that Israel is doing any sort of military action in the Middle East, whether it's obvious or covert, I think they're basically getting permission from the United States to begin with. And again, this goes back to what I said at the beginning of this. Everybody sees that somehow the United States is under the thumb of Israel. I think the opposite is true. I think, we work collaboratively, and you can look at certain points and say, oh, Netanyahu made the United States to do this. No, like really it's almost always the other way around. And of course, I mean, just all you got to do is look at the balance of power between us two, and you'd see that only makes sense. Like there's nothing that Israel has on us as a nation, maybe individuals, but nothing as a nation that would influence us to do all the things that we do. I think that it just so happens that like 90% of how we see the Middle East and how it should be controlled are actually those interests overlap.
Yeah, but this was a pretty massive attack. And I'm sure there would have been people. Well, it's interesting. There's a whole lot of stories going on. So Israel came up with these plans. America had a part of it, but Trump rejected it. Thankfully, Trump said, "No, we're going to try diplomacy first, or whatever." But then there's this thing with Mike Waltz. He's sort of been let go as national security advisor, and most of the reporting I've said there was Signalgate, which he sort of was it's a bit of a balls up by
fired,
him. We covered that.
Yep, he should have been.
And
I
then,
was really glad to see that Mike Walls was let go.
yeah, but see, I think that the reason. Have you heard about the reason why he was let go? I've heard a lot of talk about it. Was he was too hawkish against Iran?
Yeah.
And yeah, so America got rid of him, and Netanyahu's not happy about it. Netanyahu, like it's any of his business. Well, I don't know if him personally. People in the Israeli government, they're not happy that America has got rid of their guy, basically. They're the one that was fully in the go to war with Iran camp. Where are we? So, so I've got, just bear with me.
So you were talking about Mike Walls being too hawkish against Iran. I believe that. And I watched the interview with Tucker Carlson and Dan Caldwell, one of the guys that was supposedly fired over leaks out of the Pentagon, which I do think is a BS story. And definitely listen to
that's an interesting one.
side of it. So he was actually against the war or military plans or military action against Iran. So he was on the opposite side of that spectrum. So I do think that there are some people that genuinely want war with Iran within the Trump administration, within the Pentagon, within all of our intelligence agencies, within the National Security Council. And I think that, and this guy his name's Dan Caldwell. He was basically an assistant to Pete Hegseth. Basically, he was fired over his objections about going to war with Iran. So I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah, it does seem like there is a bit of a civil war, and I've got a few snippets that I'll try to get to of people in the Trump administration, whether they're fully pro-Israel. Well, I don't know if pro-Israel is the right word, but sort of like hawkish on Iran, and people who are for a more diplomatic solution. And fortunately, it seems like Trump, at least at the moment, is pushing for the diplomatic solution, and he's not too happy with the hawks. Because where are we? Sorry, bear with me. Stage. Yeah, so this was, so 5 days ago, a few things have happened. We've covered some of them. We haven't covered all of them. But, apparently Benjamin Netanyahu has been telling associates privately that he is frustrated with US President Donald Trump's Middle East policies. He says the right things, but his actions are another matter. So Netanyahu is concerned with Trump's support for the Turkish president. I think he's unhappy with, like, Trump maybe allowing Turkey to take some parts of one end of Syria, but Israel's fine to take, the other end or whatever. So Netanyahu has also been worried by Trump's decision to open nuclear talks with Iran, and concessions supposedly made by the Trump administration with little in return. I don't know if that's related to people talking about maybe allowing Iran to do civilian enrichment or something. So here's the thing. Sources have told Reuters that the nuclear deal with Iran, is shaping up to be not significantly different from the 2015 nuclear deal that Trump lambasted and ultimately withdrew from in 2018. I think that's what the only deal that would work would have to look like that one. And I think they should push for something like that, basically.
Well, I think you're probably right. I mean, I think ultimately, outside of a couple of strikes here and there and some very surgical and strategic strikes on targets. I mean, Trump is not a hawk. I mean, he's not. He's far from it. And this is what that guy Dan Caldwell was talking about all throughout his interview with Tucker Carlson. He was saying, look, everything that I'm saying is perfectly in line with what our president is saying publicly and privately. He said the problem is that all these people behind the scenes that do want this war with Iran are basically subverting the will of the president and are moving things around and moving us toward a war with Iran. And he was very vocal about that. So they trumped up some idea that he'd given a bunch of, and even the accusations were extremely vague. But I think that's right. And I can see, I think Netanyahu either thought that with Trump in, they would get in a war with Iran, or he would be able to persuade him into a war with Iran. And let's face it, like, Trump is not very easily persuaded once he has his, not from the big things, right? Like, and keeping America out of war is kind of been the cornerstone of his entire administration.
Yeah, and hopefully I can find the link, but something to do with Waltz being fired. Supposedly Trump felt like Netanyahu, through Waltz, was trying to manipulate him, and he obviously doesn't like that. So the report, I'll come to it later, but it's making it like Trump's cut off all contact with Netanyahu. I don't know how true all that is or whatever. But then there was a story about Pete Hegseth has cancelled his upcoming Israel trip. But then I think he's since downplayed that. He's like, well, no, that's just because Trump's doing his own sort of Middle East meeting. But that in itself, he's doing a Middle East meeting over there. He's meeting Saudi Arabia. And Israel isn't invited, I don't think. I think it's without Israel. And that's another thing we'll come to. Apparently Trump's sort of moving on with his plans without Israel, because a big part of it is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, they got problems with Israel. Saudi Arabia wants Israel to stop the war in Gaza and to do some sort of a push towards a Palestinian state at some point. That's what Saudi Arabia's always sort of wanted, to normalize relationships with Israel. But, Israel's, they're going to drag on this war, it seems, for as long as they can. And obviously there's no chance of a Palestinian state. They just said that they're going to move in and permanently occupy a big chunk of occupy Gaza for the foreseeable future. So, but then Trump has responded by saying, we're going to move on basically without Israel. And I'll bring up the headline later. He's open to allowing Saudi Arabia to get nukes without having to normalize relationships with Israel. That was the precondition, supposedly before, under Biden or something, for Saudi Arabia to want to get nukes. I hadn't even really heard about that, but before they had to normalize relationships with Israel for that to happen. But it seems like Trump is moving on. I'll bring up the article later. I'm a little bit all over the place, all these different stories. But there's a lot going on over there. And it seems like Trump's not as on board with Israel as many, including myself, might have thought, which is good. I'm happy with that. Because not too long ago, Trump said something like, me and Netanyahu are locked in on every issue. And that worried me, because Israel wants war with Iran. Does that mean Trump wants war with Iran? Doesn't seem like it. So we'll have to see. But tangent ran over. Let's get back to the story about what was it? Yeah, so Netanyahu. So this was just before, a few days before Trump apparently said he's not happy with Netanyahu. A few days beforehand, Netanyahu said he's not happy with Trump. So I imagine Trump would have seen this, and he's probably not happy with this either. Trump was angered by Waltz's hawkish position on Iran and coordination with Netanyahu on military options to destroy Tehran's nuclear program. So that's interesting with what you were saying before about the planning, and Israel doesn't do any planning without him, which is obviously true. But it's like Waltz didn't have the endorsement of Trump or something. I'm not really sure. Because Israel have since said, we've only spoken to Mike Waltz once and we didn't coordinate this, that, and the other. But I'm pretty sure Trump or someone's like no, we don't believe that. There's been sustained coordination, and that's why we've gotten rid of him. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but just last night I was cramming like 5 different topics in, and so they blur together a little bit. Yes, that's what I said before. Yeah, last month Trump said that they're on the same side of every issue. I really hope not. All right, so there was that, and then there was the response from Trump a little while later. Bear with me.
While you're looking that up, I just want to talk about, I was looking up some more stuff on Iran's nuclear program. So the IAEA, which is responsible for trying to inspect and decide whether or not that they're conducting weapons grade, basically developing a weapons program with nuclear weapons. They reduced their monitoring since 2021 due to Iran limiting inspections, and that creates a blind spot that could conceal illicit activities. So
yeah, but America pulled out.
What we have right there is we have the advent of the Biden administration. Like they had every opportunity under the Biden administration to.
But this was after the deal was walked away from, no? 2018. Trump ripped it up before then. So if Iran's like, all right, we'll stop you. We'll just do what we want then.
And what was Biden doing behind the scenes, even before the entire Democratic Party was trying to walk behind the scenes and make a different deal. This was all the news before the 2020 election. So, like, again,
Yeah, I wish they did make another deal. But
once Biden came in, there was zero deterrent for Iran to start weaponizing their nuclear program. Zero deterrent. Like, what would the Biden administration? They weren't going to do anything, and they knew it. They weren't going to hold it.
It's like there was a deterrent somewhat in the deal whether they agreed to, and they were mostly following, despite a couple of instances you can find of a site not being had access to. It's like they had the deterrent and the deal, and Trump ripped it up. So there's nothing really holding Iran back at that point. And it's probably in their interest to get a nuclear weapon, really, if you just look from their own self.
Under the Trump administration, he would have retaliated, and whether that be financially, whether that, and I do think that the Iranians were scared of an actual military strike through Trump. I think Trump has, like, he's drawn some red lines and he's followed through with them. So between the economic hardships that he could impose on them, which he would have, and I think he did. On top of that, the real threat of military action. But once Biden got in there, and I know at the beginning there was reports, and I don't remember the specifics of them, but I know Biden had released a bunch of funding to them, and we don't know what other talks were behind the scenes. But what I do know is that if I am the Ayatollah Khomeini, and the Biden administration comes into power, it's game on. I got 4 years to do whatever I want because they're not going to do anything to me financially. They're not going to do anything to us militarily, period. And we could, again, send them a freaking selfie next to a nuclear bomb and be like, F you. And the Biden administration is going to keep it quiet and they're not going to do anything about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. That as I said, I was happy with the Trump deal. I wish he didn't rip it up. When Biden came in, I almost wish they did do another deal. I wish Trump, look, he's going to have to, look, there's a good chance Trump will just get the same kind of deal that Obama had. And I'll be happy with that. But of course, he'll have to spin it a different way. And I hope he does. I hope he somehow makes people think this is somehow a different deal or whatever. But if he just basically gets the same deal, I'd be happy with that. Because to me, it's just people want war with Iran and they're looking for any way that they can get it. That's sort of the fundamental view I have of this that might differ from yours.
If you look, just Google Biden releases funds to Iran. I mean, there's a ton of stories. Here we have in November 22nd, 2023, Biden hands over $16 billion to Iran. New York Post, March 2024, Biden continues Iran's access to $10 billion just weeks after. And then President Biden has approved a sanctions waiver giving Tehran continued access to more than $10 billion. November 15th, 2023, Biden allows Iran another $10 billion amid Gaza controversy. And what was that? You know, that was after. No, that was 2020. No, that was. So that 2023 was October 7th, right? Yeah. So this is after what happened in Israel. So I mean, the Democrats, the Bidens and Obama specifically, have been soft on Iran, have been giving them money and giving them access to money, and have never threatened military action whatsoever. So, you know,
you're saying all that like it's a bad thing, but I kind of prefer all that to this antagonistic thing. Like Iran's
until Iran has a nuclear bomb, and then they launch a nuclear strike on Israel, and then we can sit back and we can talk about what should have happened, that we shouldn't have let Iran, because they will. I think you're dealing with absolute insanity, and I think that there is a very real. And then the next thing you know, we're in World War III, and next thing you know, tens of millions of people are dead. Like, we can talk about what America should do, what couldn't do, who's actually evil, who's sovereign, all these things. But at the end of the day, there's real evil in the world that can equate to tens of millions of people dying and the entire globe on fire, literally and figuratively. Like, those things are still real. And I think we're so departed from World War II and those things, like outside of Iraq and Afghanistan, which like didn't really affect most of the world outside of the US and a few of our allies, but generally speaking, and the Iraqis, obviously. I mean, millions of Iraqis died, but at the same time, millions of Americans were also affected negatively by that. So, I think we've lost the reality, a view of reality that can and does exist. We just haven't experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't want Iran to have a.
I mean, that's a real question to you, Chris. Like you have what in my mind seems like this ideological view of like live and let live, but at the same time, like 3 months from now or a year from now, if Iran did a nuclear strike on Israel and the next thing we were propelled into World War III, like what would you look back on and say, hey, this is what we should have done?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And obviously, if it gets to that point, obviously you should have done way more, and hindsight's 2020. But I'm not sure, like you're saying Iran has a nuke. Why aren't they nuking Israel? I'm not sure that's so baked in stone.
I mean, having a nuke and then having
the ability to use it properly. And,
like those are two very different things, but not that far apart from each other, right? So I don't know, and it's still not to say that they can't drive a truck or smuggle a truck with a freaking nuclear bomb inside the back of it. It's not like it has to be launched from, I don't know what intelligence capabilities, I think Israel's intelligence on Iran's pretty good. So that is probably not something that'd be actually feasible. But because, I mean, looking at when they got, when they had access and they ended up shutting down their reactors, I mean, that took clearly Israel intelligence has people on the inside of the Iranian government. Like almost everything that they've been able to do with the Iranian government and some of the covert actions that they've taken absolutely required that.
And like they've been assassinating scientists and stuff for a few decades. It reminds me before you were saying, what has Israel done to Iran? They've been assassinating a lot of Iranian people. I'm pretty sure that's been going back decades, hasn't it? You hear stories of some scientists, maybe he was working on nukes or something, gets blown up by some kind of Israeli assassination in Israel. Have you heard of that? Am I imagining things?
Say that again. I was reading a comment while you were saying that.
Like Israel has been doing a lot of assassinations going back quite a while against Iranian scientists and stuff that might be working.
Yeah, nuclear scientists.
So I mean,
so I've always heard like this happened and this guy was assassinated by Israel, and I don't doubt any of those things, but I don't know that I've ever seen like an actual news report on it. I always hear it kind of talked about in like the zeitgeist of things that do take place. Like maybe there has been news reports of it.
Yeah, they don't talk about. It's just one of those things. Israel just goes around assassinating people, and the media keeps that on the down low, I think.
Because
they even use fake passports. We had a story in Australia. This is kind of interesting, where I think Israel was doing something shady, like they were using fake Australian passports to help with their assassinations. I'd have to double check that because that sounds kind of heavy, but I think that's what it was. And our previous Prime Minister
Israel was using fake passports to do what?
To do some kind of assassinations. I'd have to double check that because I'm going by memory, and that does seem quite explosive.
Is that what you're saying?
No, like somewhere else. Like I don't know, maybe they were using an Australian passport to travel overseas somewhere else with a fake.
Probably.
I really should have researched this more before I brought it up. But for whatever reason, Australia kicked out some Israelis because they were doing some dodgy stuff. I think it was something to do with. Sorry, was that because we're anti-Semitic? But how's this? Here's an interesting story with Australian politics, right? So there's a Jewish lobbyist, like a power broker. I forget. I could find his name, but it's in Kevin Rudd's book. And this sort of influential Jewish lobbyist was talking to him, and said something like, "Oh, like he's not happy with it." And Kevin Rudd was explaining to him, like, Israel have done this multiple times, whatever it is, faking documents or whatever the thing was. And they said they wouldn't do it. They've got in trouble and they've done it again. So that's why I'm kicking them out.
I also know that the U.S. does this all the time too, and I know that there's intel agencies even within the Australian government that do this all the time. So I don't even know why this is like anything crazy, but continue.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it was our prime minister wasn't happy about it, so he said, "Look, stop doing that, and we'll send a message and we'll kick you out." And some Jewish lobbyist was giving it to the prime minister for doing something against Israel or whatever. Mark Liebler, his name is. He's a very powerful kind of guy. And he said to something, so Kevin Rudd, he was eventually replaced mid-term by Julia Gillard. This is in the Labour Party, our left-wing party. And she basically stabbed him in the back, and she was eventually voted in, but she just replaced him. She Kamala'd him, basically, sort of. Not, it's a bit different, but you know what I mean. Anyway, and Mark Liebler, Kevin Rudd wrote this in his book. He said, Mark Liebler said, look, you're not basically, I'm not happy with what you're doing to Israel. And he goes, Julia Gillard, she's a great friend of Israel, on the other hand, unlike you. But you don't have anything to worry about. You wouldn't have anything to worry about Julia Gillard now, would you? And it was like 2 months later, she's the prime minister and he's not. And Kevin Rudd, to be fair, he's since said, look, I'm not saying, that he was saying, hey, I'll be able to roll you because you're not doing it for Israel or whatever. But the implication was there in the book, and he was basically sort of almost threatened, mafia style, that's how I took it, by this lobbyist, saying, how dare you kick out this Israeli ambassador? Your competitor or whatever. She, on the other hand, is a good friend of Israel. And like 2 months later, she was prime minister. And he was gone.
Look, what this is, again, it's God's people. You take care of God's people, you're going to find favor on you. It's just the way it works. And I say that a little bit in jest, but I really do believe that too, by the way. Real quick, going to the assassination of...
We're all God's people, okay? Things change in the New Testament.
No.
We can all get to heaven. We can all go straight to God. We don't need to be a certain...
Hold on. The New Testament is very clear about this. Yes, the Gentiles are allowed into the kingdom of heaven. All right, there was concessions made, but the Jews are still God's people, and there's plenty of verses, and there's plenty of...
What does that mean? They're God's people? Are we not God's people?
God's people. God...
They were initially chosen for something in the Old Testament.
Well,
right?
Yeah, they have a genetic lineage with that. But the fact is that that God even states throughout the Bible, if you want to believe the Bible, we don't get to pick parts of it, but there is a special place in God's heart for the Jews, period. Like, I don't know what else to say. The question I do have, the question I do have is, like, I remember getting into this argument with, he was one of my chief warrant officers in the first team that I was ever on in SF, and he was Jewish. And I'm like, I don't remember what came up, but it was like, no, Gary, Jews aren't a people. Like, that is not like a race or whatever else, it's just a religion. And I'm like, no, first of all, like, and I know technically you can convert to Judaism. That whole thing gets a little bit weird, and maybe I should have some of my Jewish friends really school me up on that. But I can tell you right now, that's not exactly right. It's not just a religion. It does have...
Tell me you Gentile-splained the reality to a Jewish person?
What's that?
So you Gentile-splained the reality to a Jewish person about what they are.
Yeah, and I actually looked it up later on, and he's just factually wrong too. I mean,
yeah.
Anyways, let's talk about the assassination of the Iranian nuclear scientist. So this is from WikiLeaks, so take it for what it's worth. Between 2010 and 2025, Iranian nuclear scientists, says all their weird names, were basically killed in foreign-linked assassinations. Goes on to talk about the implications that, Israel was behind it, probably was. Date, 15 January 2007. Artist Shearer, blah, 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 blah. He was an authority on electromagnetism. I'm just going to call all these guys Muhammad because it's close enough. It's either a Muhammad or a derivative of Muhammad. Another Muhammad was killed 12 January 2010. He was a professor in quantum field theorist and elementary particle physicist. It goes on and on and on. But so the last one was known in 27 November 2020. And then it goes in, if you guys want to look it up on Wikipedia, it tells a little backstory on each one of these individuals. So, I mean, that's probably legit. I also think that many countries around the world, for one form or another, I don't think it's just Russia. I don't think it's just Israel. I think we'd be naive to think that we don't do assassinations behind the scenes. I think we do. I mean, what's the difference between assassination and a freaking, tomahawk strike, not that much difference.
Yeah, I guess a tomahawk strike is just more respectable or something.
That's what I was looking for, an ethno-religious group. There is some ethnic tie to the religion itself. And again, I do think I would like to hear from somebody that knows other than anti-Semite, because I know this has come up before. I know there was a book talking about like essentially the Jews of the Bible and the Old Testament, and people in Israel right now, or most people that claim to be Jewish, have no actual bloodline relationship. But I would like to know if that's true.
Yeah, me too. It's probably a mix. But yeah, let's get back to the good stuff, because in the idea that Israel runs America not being true, it's sort of getting backed up by a few of these things. So I'll sort of meet you on that, because Trump's not happy with Israel. So if Israel's pulling the strings, how's Trump allowed to do what he's doing? Because he's in charge. So I'm not saying Israel runs America or whatever, but I just do say they do have quite a bit of influence. It's too much, and it should be resisted. Hopefully it is. So yeah, I got two reports here. Actually, I was going to read the Grok thing before I get there. I did a Grok printout of these topics that summed them up pretty well. So the one I had here, in May, reports from ex-posts and Israeli media, which we're going to go through, highlighted a rift between Trump and Netanyahu, driven by Trump's frustration with Netanyahu's attempts to influence US policy on Iran and Gaza. Trump feels disrespected by Netanyahu's push for military action against Iran and lack of alignment with US deals like the Houthi ceasefire, leading to claims of severed ties, though no official US confirmation exists. The fallout, worsened by Waltz's firing for his pro-Netanyahu stance, reflects Trump's prioritization of US-led diplomatic and economic gains over Israel's hawkish agenda. This is one of the first reports here saying that Trump's not happy with Netanyahu, mutual disagreement, he's very frustrated with him. So we said earlier this week, we reported that Netanyahu was frustrated with Trump. Now it appears the American president has also lost patience with his Israeli counterpart. So Trump's decided to stop waiting for Israel and instead move forward with Middle East initiatives without Netanyahu. I think that might be at least the Saudi one and the Houthi one. The sources explains that the president wishes to make decisions he believes will advance American interests, particularly regarding Saudi Arabia and Gulf states. Israel was supposed to participate in some of these steps, referring primarily to normalization with Saudi Arabia. However, according to Trump's perspective, Netanyahu is delaying making the necessary decisions. Given the situation, the president refuses to wait until Israel takes its expected actions and is proceeding without Israeli participation. So it should be noted that as part of normalization with Israel, Saudi Arabia expects an end to the war in Gaza. Good luck with that one. And an Israeli declaration about a horizon for a Palestinian state, or similar terminology. Good luck with that one as well. Minister Ron Dermer, he's the one that had the blowout with Trump's envoy that we covered, Adam Bueller, who manages this issue, has spent numerous hours crafting language related to Israel's willingness to establish a Palestinian state in the future, given public opposition to the concept and the political sensitivity of the term in Israel. So that's interesting. Someone in Israel actually talking about the idea of a Palestinian state. I thought that wasn't even possible. I don't think that's very serious, though.
Did you happen to listen to or watch the Joe Rogan podcast with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray?
Oh yeah, that was great. I thought that was basically, we sort of covered a little bit, and Douglas Murray continued with his sort of points that I thought were ridiculous. There was sort of like appeals to authority, and
100%. So I generally really, really like Douglas Murray. I really like Dave Smith too. I just disagree with him, and I still do. But I will say that Douglas Murray made an ass of himself during that entire session. I think he lost a lot of credibility, even in my mind. And I actually watched him on a podcast with what's his name, Chris something. After that show, which Israel didn't even really come up, and I went back to enjoying, his normal perspective, I guess, on the rest of the world. But that was really bad. And look, I will say, out of anybody, I think Dave Smith has the most compelling argument, coming from the perspective that, Israel is the real problem in the Middle East, and even in between Gaza. I find it compelling. I don't find it necessarily convincing. I do think, again, he has some bias on there, and I do think, and look, I think ultimately almost all of us do have some bias for one reason or another. I mean, I'm generally pro-Israel, but at the same time, like, there's definitely a lot of bad things going on both sides of that issue. And what the point of all that is, like, again, to try to say that Israel is the hand that controls the United States is one of the most ridiculous arguments, I think, on the face of the planet. Like, there's in no world where Israel do they have influence? Do they influence us? Yes. Is there a lot of, again, I think they're an ally, a trusted ally that we can use as a proxy in the Middle East, and we do. But I think there's some give and take on there. So if that's, the Israel controlling us, I just think that we are a natural ally. I think that's really what it comes down to. We are a natural ally.
It's interesting because there was also that bill that they tried to pass, sort of cracking down on anti-Semitism. I don't have the stuff here prepared, but it was like a few years ago there was a bill that was passed to somehow push back against, you get like BDS, they're a group that tries to boycott anything to do with Israel.
Yeah.
Like, Israel, they sell this product and that product, so if you're against Israel, don't buy these goods or whatever. And there was some law passed against them a few years ago. They tried to pass a new version of that, which expanded it a little bit. I don't know all the details. I think they were trying to expand it to like the UN or something. But basically it was like a law which was sort of protecting Israel from boycotts, And Charlie Kirk put out a good point. A few right-wing sort of Trump supporters were against it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was another one. They said this goes against free speech. And Charlie Kirk even said this is why people say this helps spread anti-Semitism, because it makes it look like Israel's controlling America. So you might say it's ridiculous, and it kind of is, but you can see where it sort of comes from. And Charlie Kirk was almost saying, if you pass a law where America passes a law to protect Israel, which makes no sense for America at all.
I agree. I think that would be unconstitutional, and I don't think it's correct.
Yeah, so they dropped it, luckily.
Yeah,
I mean, it was pushback, I think, from the people.
It wouldn't have passed to begin with. I do think it's silly when we catch people on our side doing things like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how.
My sound just cut out. I think I might have to.
I can still hear you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't hear you. I'll come back. I'll restart, and I'll come back in 20 seconds.
While he's gone, I just want to agree with Jeff on this, that clearly Israel is a better ally to the U.S. than Australia. Yeah, so we got a lot going on. It's actually kind of fun to get back in here and re-engage on some of the world issues, as opposed to just getting locked in my own little microcosm of world doing our thing over. Can you hear me now, Chris?
I can. Not sure what that was, but
oh my gosh, your sound is shit now.
Oh, is it? Actually, hang on, because your sound's a bit fine too. My settings might be different. Hang on.
No, you're coming through on like your computer microphone or something.
Not how about this? That should be better.
There we go.
Yeah, it was annoying. I just went to refresh the page. I said I'd come back in a second, but all of a sudden all my settings had changed, and I fixed some of them, but I didn't catch that one. I switched my microphone to my Bluetooth. Didn't even know they had microphones on it, but anyway. What was I going to show you?
2025.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, they have microphones on them, weirdo. This cup has a microphone.
Another thing too. A few weeks ago, we did have that high pitch noise, and I found out what that was, because it was still sticking around even the next episode, a little bit in the background. Basically, there's these lights that I got. Something to do with a grounding issue. As soon as I turned on one of these lights, the high pitch. So I moved it to a different PowerPoint, and now the thing's going. So there you go. That's just in case anyone was wondering what the sound issue was from 4 weeks ago.
Well, what
Now you
I'm
know.
going to need now is an apology for blaming me for your sound issues.
I'll have to review the tape. I'm not sure how much blame. I definitely was trying to not put the blame on me. I think I was trying to put it on the StreamYards. I said, it's not Gary, it's a StreamYards issue.
Oh, now he admits it's him. It was just a grounding. It's just like we told him.
No one told me it was a grounding issue, okay? I was getting told it was fans. It was all kinds of stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, what was I? I had something I was going to show before I... Oh, yeah. Just on the Douglas Murray thing. This isn't too serious, but... just
You've never been? You've never been? Have you been there? Right, that's a good point. You haven't been? By the way, how is he in all these wars? Can I just go to wars? Is that the way you should at least just go to courtesy of going? Can I just go to wars, or do I have to come back and say what people want me to say about the wars? Can I go to the wars and have my own opinions, or do I have to have the opinions? Not if you want to go back. That's right. It's very interesting, this war tourism. How do I get on this war tourism?
That's a good point, too, because Murray makes the fallacy of saying, oh, you have... Because Dave Smith was talking about, well, they imposed the blockade and they're restricting... Which is just a fact. I mean, you don't need to go there to check these things. Yeah. Murray's like, well, you haven't even been to a crossing point or whatever?
Well, he was very dramatic about it. It was just like that, too. He's like, oh...
Haven't been?
Oh, you haven't been?
You at least have the courtesy of going there.
It was very dramatic. It was over the top. It was terrible. It was just bad.
And when he has been, he's been as an embedded journalist with the Israeli forces, which that's not going to give you the true picture of it. That's not regarded as great journalism. You get into the truth. You're embedded with one army. Sure, you can see a bit more, but one, you don't have to go there to know things, and two, tagging along with the Israeli army will probably give you a one-sided picture of the story anyway.
Yeah, so, I mean, to me, it was almost like Douglas Murray, like revealing his true self, and it didn't look good. Like suddenly I went from loving that guy to like, oh wait, in reality, you're a pompous ass that, like you have way too much ego going on here to act like that. So that's kind of the takeaway that I had. And Rogan has brought him up. As a matter of fact, he just did a podcast with Cameron Hayes that he's going over that whole same bit all over again. So he's brought that up in almost every podcast since Douglas Murray's been on. So I don't know if I think it's going to be a bit before Douglas Murray comes on another Joe Rogan podcast, because I bet Douglas is fuming over his impersonation of
that was a great impersonation. I had a few things saved a few weeks ago. It's all kind of old now, but because Douglas Murray, he wrote an article in the New York Post, I guess, after that, basically making the same sort of points, but he was making all kinds of factual errors. When we were covering, they were talking about Darryl Cooper saying that Hitler was sort of he sort of downplayed his anti-Semitism at one point, and Douglas Murray was getting all bent out of shape over that, even though I think that is somewhat true or whatever.
Murray knows anything about Darryl Cooper. I think Douglas Murray
he said he hasn't listened.
Heard that Darryl Cooper has now been strawman to death, and that's how people like Douglas Murray have come to know and accept him. When these same people, like I remember when Douglas Murray was speaking out against a lot of different things that were controversial, where he was being turned into a racist and a lot of different things. And you would think that somebody like Douglas Murray, having been on the other side of that, would have researched that a little bit more, because having listened to some of Darryl Cooper, both with Darryl Cooper on the JRE and then following that up with just listen to some of his content, he's about as objective as I have found. Now, you can disagree with some of his conclusions based on what he thinks to be facts, but I do think everything that I've heard, he does back it up with at least some sort of factual evidence. And by that, I mean a lot of historical records and things like that. So, who knows how accurate those are, but to me, it's pretty clear that he's not like anti-Semitic or anything else. And I think that again, he comes from both sides. He actually argues on the behest of Israel, then kind of goes back to the Palestinians. I'm actually, other than what's been put out into the media in different snippets, I actually don't even know what he really thinks about on the totality of the conflict between the Palestinians and Israel.
Yeah, it's interesting because he just recently, Bradley Darrell Cooper just wrote an article about anti-Semitism and how that's on the rise and it's a real problem. I haven't read it, but I mean, how much of an anti-Semite can you be if you're writing about how bad anti-Semitism is? And
you haven't read it because
it's on
you were the subject. It was about you.
No, I
it
don't
was
think so.
a biography. We lost you, or I lost you. Hold on. Maybe it's my ears.
No,
I hear you.
check
It's my headphones. My bad. See, now that you admitted wrongdoing on the audio department, now I'm blaming you for everything.
I thought you were going to say now you're opening up to admitting your fault sometimes, but I guess
No.
not.
Well, I mean, as soon as I have a fault, I'll admit it. I admit my faults freely.
Yeah, but just you don't must not be any. All right. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, with with Darrell Cooper, even on the Joe Rogan thing with Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan even asked, "Have you heard any of his stuff?" And he's like, "No, I don't need to."
Yeah.
So you're coming on talking about that we only need to listen to experts. You're like the furthest thing from an expert when it comes to Bradley Cooper. Yet you're going to talk about it with no problem. And with that point about he was upset that Cooper said something about Hitler downplaying his anti-Semitism at one point. When he wrote his article a few days later in the New York Post, he made the same point, but all of a sudden he swapped the name for the other guy. Now he's talking about Ian Carroll talking about Hitler downplaying his anti-Semitism. So I think he got that wrong. I think he did mean to say Cooper, but he's not even sure of the people that he's criticising. He doesn't know one from the other. So it was just ridiculous. Yeah. Yet he's like, I'm the expert. You should only listen to experts. And then he shows how he has no real expertise with very basic things.
And my question during that whole time was like, what makes you an expert? Like, I don't even care. Like, a journalist is not an expert. Like, on anything. So, I like listening to his points in the same way that I like listening to Dave Smith's points, but I do think that Dave Smith gets some things wrong. But I like the way that he articulates what he believes. And the same thing with Douglas Murray. Like, I generally like his take on things. I don't think that he's an expert on any of the things that he's talking about. And quite frankly, I appreciate that because the experts are almost always wrong to begin with. Like, like most of the people teaching economics in any university in the US, throw them out in the real world and they'd be freaking living off the government teat. Like, I don't want to hear about the experts. The experts are the ones that told us everything that we heard about COVID. Those were the best experts in the world, supposedly. The nutrition experts are the one that gave us the food pyramid. Like, F off. Like, you're not an expert. I don't even want to hear it. Like, if you tell me you're an expert, I'm gonna go find somebody like that's doing a podcast that was a mechanic yesterday and decided to sound off because he's probably gonna have more common sense take on what's going on than you do as an expert. So again, I don't even know what his bona fides he thinks he's talking about that makes him an expert to begin with, other than he's been there, he's reported on it. Like, F off.
Yeah. So it's a stupid point to start with, that you need expertise, and then he doesn't really have expertise himself. So his point falls apart from a few different angles.
This is a great point, man. I think you're right. And really, this is true with all fathers. Really, we should be the ones getting presents on Mother's Day, if you think about it, because yeah, you're welcome, babe. I gave you children, beautiful children at that.
Well, that's true. You do give the gift of motherhood, I suppose.
I gave her a little lucky.
All right, look, back to serious journalism, okay? Just rounding out that whole thing, because I had a whole bunch more articles about these, there's slight rift with America and Israel. We won't have time to sort of go through all of them, but maybe I might do I haven't watched this video yet, but Glenn Greenwald, who I like, he's sort of talking about the similar topic. Says nobody's claiming there's a full break of the sacred US-Israel relationship. Trump, like Biden and Obama, is funding Israel's military wars. So he's sort of pushing back because a lot of people, maybe like me, were sort of getting a bit excited, like, oh, is Trump sort of going against Israel? That's pretty awesome. But I mean, not really. That's not. it's not a serious breakup there. But there is a bit of a difference, which is kind of exciting. But two recent events: a ceasefire with the Houthis and exclusion of Israel from the Gulf deals, like Saudi Arabia. So I should change the rhetoric.
American
So
ships.
might play a bit of that.
Then on top of that,
Not the whole thing.
of all that, there is the decision that Trump announced just several days ago that the bombing campaign of Yemen, which Trump restarted once Biden left office and escalated, that he was stopping that. He said, look, the Houthis, we got to deal with them. They basically promised not to attack American ships anymore. But notably, they did not promise to stop attacking Israeli ships. And the Israelis just bombed and destroyed their airport, and $500 billion of damage, including all sorts of civilian aircraft that Yemen has. And
Just quickly
Yeah,
pause that because
quick. So I've listened to a lot of Glenn Greenwald's stuff. I've never noticed his voice to be that nasally. I don't know what's going on with him.
yeah, it's never been his strongest point or whatever.
It's
But
always
like, say, Trump signed this deal.
Sorry. Nothing. Go ahead.
So yeah, Trump's done this deal with the Houthis, sort of ceasefire. Israel's not included. This was after. So this is after the deal. This is, so Yemen, the Houthis launched one ballistic missile at the airport. Then they had the ceasefire with Trump, and then they've launched another ballistic missile. I think Israel shot this one down. I'm not sure. For these people with the bomb siren. So America's basically said, yeah, we're not worried about that.
I can't hear you over that. Whatever you were saying, I couldn't hear you.
Basically, Trump made the deal with the Houthis to not attack American ships. And they were like, oh, we weren't even really trying to attack your ships anyway. That's cool. But Israel is left to fend for themselves. So that's why Israel's not happy. And I can sort of understand in a way. Because America's basically like, look, Houthis, as long as you don't bomb our ships, we're cool. You want to send ballistic missiles into Israel? That's not on us. So that's why I find this kind of amazing. That America would, because it was like when they had their hostage negotiator, he was sort of talking about trying to get the American hostage out from Gaza. And then Israel, we talked about this briefly, they basically scuttled that. I reckon that plays into it too, because that was sort of American policy that Israel ruined. So Trump would be like, hey, I'm trying to do this, that, and the other, and you guys are trying to go against me and sabotage things. He's not too happy. So I'll let you deal with the Houthis on yourself. Israel, they did their own bombing campaign. They show that they can take care of Yemen if they need.
Look, I do agree that, at the end of the day, we need to take the training wheels off of Israel, and there needs to be a little bit more delineation between, like, what is America's interest and what is Israel's interest. And guess what, Israel, if it's in your interest, like, you take care of that. Like, you got billions of dollars of our hardware, some that we've given, some that you've paid for, and then you have our support, but at the same time, it's kind of time to kick them out of the nest a little bit and not conflate their interests with ours as much as we do, I guess. That's for sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's just sort of to keep our eye on. I probably won't drag on. I probably drained on too much about that. Because I had two other more fun things I wanted to finish out with. I don't know if you got too much to present or whatever. Oh, this was just a short thing.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Cash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
That's basically... Oh, because there's another thing, Pam Bondi, she was saying another reason why it's taking so long is because apparently they've got thousands of videos with Epstein and children that they're going through, which I found kind of strange as well. Because it's interesting, because, with just Epstein, none of the visitors or whatever, just Epstein. I don't know. And that comment was interesting when he said, no, I think he killed himself, because most people generally think he didn't kill himself. He was killed. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I don't know. It could be, he just didn't want the shame and killed himself, and the cameras turned off at the right time and the guards went to sleep at the right time. I suppose it's possible, but I don't know. Most people generally think he was killed, but not Patel from whatever he's seen. So that was kind of interesting. That, the official line is Jeffrey Epstein did kill himself. What do you think? What do you think about that? Do you think he? I mean, it's hard for us to know, but you reckon Epstein killed himself?
I think there's too many weird things around that event that, I mean, all of it points to the obvious, that he was killed. Who killed him? I don't know. Was the United States government involved in that? I mean, I think that's a real possibility for one reason or another, whether that was, certain people within our own government that were compromised, that they wanted to silence, or, maybe Epstein was an asset for the CIA that they wanted to, and he was going to expose that, because that would be a real big issue. And I think that the likelihood that Epstein was an asset for us is much more likely than he was an asset for Israel. And I know that's another thing that keeps getting pushed around. So no, I don't. I think Epstein was. I think the chance that Epstein killed himself is less than 1%. I'll put it that way. Like when you have all the suspicious activity that was going on with cameras, with guards, with that doesn't just happen. That's not a coincidence.
So what do you make of Cash there? Because he just said, I think he killed himself in that jail cell.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Cash knows. I don't know if, again, that could have been a U.S. government sanctioned covert action. And of course, Cash is going to toe the line, or Cash may not know, or Cash may be seeing some information behind the scenes that we don't know about, and maybe he did kill himself, or Cash is being fed information that other elements of the government created that indicate, or Cash is just reading the conclusion that is the official conclusion. I don't know. But I think there's almost zero chance that he killed himself. I mean, come on, there's just too much going around. It's like, and by the way, that did bring up another one, folks. If you haven't listened to, if you're a UFO nerd like I am, if you haven't watched the Hal Puthoff Joe Rogan. So Hal Puthoff is a physicist. He worked on a lot of different covert operations, including the UFO program. I mean, he says outright that Roswell was indeed alien craft crashing, and that that crash material and bodies were taken from Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So there was a lot of revelations in there that were subtle. Not really subtle, but it's just like you're listening to this discussion, like, hold on a second. You just kind of breeze by like 50 years of secrecy, more than that. All this stuff that we've been denying it from the U.S. government. And this is a guy that is a very serious person that has definitely worked on everything from remote viewing to, again, lots of different secret projects. And is he's a credible person. And he basically says, hey, we have a lot. He says, one of the things he reveals is that there are more than 10 non-human intelligent craft that the United States has in its possession. So that's some pretty interesting stuff.
What was his name?
Hal Puthoff.
Hal Puthoff.
Yep. HAL P-U-T-O-F-F. Yeah. P-U-T-H-O-F-F. Puthoff. Puthoff.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Got...
That's news to me. The former boss of Skunk Works also said it also on his deathbed. Yeah, and I 100% Bob Lazar. I've been following Bob Lazar since like probably, if I didn't watch the original airing of that interview in 1989, it wasn't very long after it. And he's had a pretty consistent story, and I've watched every interview he's done, every documentary he's been in. Yeah, no, ET's real, bro. ET's real.
It's a big universe. You think so? I had something maybe to finish on. I don't know how much more you want to go, but there was we had Anzac Day.
What?
Recent Anzac Day. So the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. It's like we celebrate veterans from World War I and II, and I guess all wars, all soldiers,
including the Emu Wars.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's probably implied, but it's never specifically mentioned. But you know, I think it's included.
You guys ever get the POWs back from the emus?
I'm not sure. I think it's sort of all got covered up. I'm not sure exactly the details of these kind of things, but I think so. But you never know. I probably should look into it. You know? But anyway, in this country, we also have these things called Welcome to Country ceremonies. Have you ever heard of these? Because I'm interested to get the American take on this, because I find this just so annoying, but I imagine the Americans will find it even more annoying, because it's to do with like guilt of colonization.
Oh my God.
Okay, like you guys, we're all living on stolen land, okay, and we should like always remember that and remember the previous people, and you know, and in Australia we need to remember that so much that every time you go,
do you open up with land acknowledgements?
That's what it is. Basically, we do them before every big sports event, and what I'm going to show you now, we did it before the Anzac, the dawn service. People are there at 4 a.m. to pay respects to the veterans. And before we start, let's have a look at the real owners of this land, which aren't you white people, by the way. It's like, where are we?
Please.
So I can't believe it, right? But so these happen like a fair bit.
Good morning.
That's right.
The dawn service
and
the
you know, we sort of just go along with them.
Mark Brown.
Yes, here we go. So this happens, these sort of land acknowledgements, welcome to country. They're a land acknowledgement, and they're also welcome to country. They don't mean the whole country of Australia. They mean a country is in like a region of Australia or whatever. So they call, I think this is Melbourne or Sydney, I'm not sure. I think it's Melbourne. You know, and they call it I forget the name, but he'll say, this is the such and such land, that's that country. And basically the ceremony is, we're welcoming you to our little region, basically. So, but people say, why do I need to be welcomed to my own country? It's not technically the whole country, but like even the region. I mean, people that live in Melbourne, why do you need to be welcomed to the Aboriginal lands of not Melbourne, but whatever the Bunurong, I forget exactly what he says. I find the whole concept annoying.
I do too. Land acknowledgements to me are like this backhanded FU. Like, hey guys, we just want to go ahead and start this meeting out knowing that we took your land. You can't do shit about it. And we're just going to go ahead and just kind of rub it in a little bit. And yeah, it was your land. It's not anymore. Thanks. And all right. So what's the first thing that we're going to cover today? Like, come on. It's like the most,
See, that would be one thing, but we do it differently. We basically have a vibe of like, really, it's still your land. That's the extra annoying bit. This is stolen land. It's always indigenous land.
That implication is still there too, but it's like, again, I just think it's exactly what an elitist person would come up with and feign this. I don't even know, like this sympathy, like, oh God. But then then as soon as that's all over with, they're like, These freaking idiots. These Aborigines actually think we give a shit that we took your land. We don't. We're just going to sit here and pretend, and that's just going to make you feel good. And yeah, and then we're going to go back there, and I'm going to go to my house that's built on your land that I don't give a shit, because if I actually cared, what I'd do is I'd sign my house over to you, but I'm not going to do that. But, you know, I think it's funny they're laughing about it on the inside and when no one's looking.
Yeah, well, in this country a couple of years ago, we had a referendum on whether or not to include some kind of acknowledgement in our constitution. They called it the voice. There were two parts. We were going to change our constitution to say, you know, whatever. Apparently it's 60,000 years now. It keeps going up. But apparently they've been here 60,000 years, and we have to put that in our constitution. And on top of that, we need to have a special council made up of just Indigenous people to advise Parliament or something. So I went to the referendum and we said no, it didn't pass, luckily. Yet still, we have all these kind of ceremonies. And this one became a bit of a news story because it's especially abrasive on Anzac Day. You got people fighting for their country, and we've got this thing where it's like, it's not even really your country anyway. It's not even really your land anyway. Just remember, this is always Aboriginal land, and basically you people are...
So Anzac is basically a Veterans Day for Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Basically a World War...
Or a
mainly
memorial,
a World War I and II.
More of a Memorial Day.
Yeah. But before that starts, we've got to do this.
I am Uncle Mark Brown.
It's a little soft.
And I'm an elder and senior cultural heritage officer of the Bunurong people. I'm a Gunditjmara man on my mother's side, and I'm a Bunurong man on my father's side. And this morning, I'm here to welcome everybody to my father's country. Beautiful Bunurong country.
That's why it's a news story. It got some boos. Normally we just cop it. In Australia, we're just like, okay, yep, your land, yep, sorry about that, yep. But this time it got booed. And there's an extra element because it turns out the people that were doing the booing, they are some kind of extremists, like neo-Nazis or something.
Oh, of course.
So the news story was like neo-Nazis disrespect Anzac Memorial. But really and it wasn't just, well, actually, I don't know how many people were booing or whatever. But I'll just let it keep playing. But it became a bit of a story for sort of wrong reasons.
It was 12 booers.
But before we do that,
oh, there's a 14.
we pay our acknowledgements and we pay our respects.
But like the way he started, he goes, I welcome you to my father's country. It's like, is this not our country? Like, what is this? You know? And he keeps going, similar kind of stuff. We've got to pay respect to my people, blah, blah, blah. I think at one point someone yells out, what about the Anzacs?
We pay our respects to all of my ancestors. We pay our respects to all of my elders. And we pay respects to all of my community members.
Yeah, the claps from the people that go along with all this.
And emerging. And we acknowledge the continuous and unbroken connection to country for the Bunurong people. We also pay our acknowledgements and respects to all traditional custodians of Australia.
They always wear some kind of fur.
Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. Who work,
big ass possum.
rest.
Yeah, maybe it's not.
Play on Bunurong country.
I saw another one that was a possum pelt.
We acknowledge their continuous and unbroken connection to country for all of their people.
It's funny, he's got all these diamonds in his ear. Here's the other thing. They get paid at least hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars just to say this. This is a bit longer. This one goes for maybe 5 minutes or whatever. But normally they just get up there and say, we acknowledge whatever, the original ancestors of this land, and we acknowledge that they've always got a very strong spiritual connection to the land that's never been broken. And like for this one, he would have been paid thousands of dollars for this. And a lot of the time it's taxpayer money and stuff, so, you know.
And we thank each and every single one of them for being here with us.
It's hostile.
But today,
on
the sacred lands of the Bunurong people, we all gather in the spirit of respect and unity.
Yeah, sure.
And this welcome, it's an opportunity.
Anyway, it sort of drags on. There's maybe a bit more
our
going.
beautiful bushland of reconciliation. New commitment to honouring.
I think I got most of it.
Acknowledging the tradition.
Oh yeah, then same thing again. Some other. This is funny. I had to look this up. This is the governor of Victoria, not actual leader. Something connected to the English She's like the representative of like England or something. I don't know. Anyway, but she gets booed as well, just briefly.
Lands on which we are gathered, the Boonwurrung people, the Eastern Kulin.
So I think this is like a shift because there's since been a lot of polls, and they're like, should we scrap these welcome to country ceremonies? And it's overwhelmingly yes. You know, they were supposed to do another one that night. There was a football game, and they were supposed to have a welcome to country, and they cancelled it because I think they were worried about a whole stadium booing it. But so it'll be interesting to see how that turns out because that's just one of these things. I was just curious to see what Americans think of this because this is like woke plus, right? Like this is like.
I've only seen these land acknowledgement statements in like the most liberal bastions of the country, like, you know. So I don't. It's number one. It's not that common in the United States, and again, it's only going to be. You're going to see shit like that on like the city council of LA or something, you know. So it's not that common, but it does. Again, it's almost laughable. It's like a running joke with these liberals because, you know, it was the liberals that started that whole thing. And then it's like, it's the liberals like, oh, yeah, you know what? Just like Jeff said up there, like, all right, we took your country. We're really sorry about it. But, you know, here's a trail. Here's some stuff to live on. And you know what? You can open up a casino or something like that. Oh, and by the way, you know what we'll do? Just to tell you how much we appreciate you. We'll also, you know, make one of your people or Native Americans like a we're going to make you an icon in our different sports teams and things like that. But oh wait, nope, just joking. We're going to get rid of that too. It's the whole thing is a joke, and it's almost racism of the worst kind. Like it's almost like I almost think that there's a certain elements of people that start that really do start these things with malice and but I don't know. Maybe they're just idiots and I'm giving them too much credit for it. I don't know, but I find the whole thing ridiculous, absurd. And the fact is that every group of people have been taking things from every other group of people since the dawn of time, and everybody lives in the most peaceful I don't care where you are in the world. Like you have access to things and capabilities, and you have a life easier than people have ever had going back in history. And, you know, that's the other thing. Even with the Native Americans here in the United States, like when you read back and you read some unvarnished history of what the different tribes and why Americans started calling the Native Americans savages, the stuff that they used to do to people, I mean, it was beyond anything that we can even talk about. And yet we've completely whitewashed that from history. We've completely whitewashed the idea of the fact that we had this very, you know, this country started out with a very small group of settlers that were just like, yeah, we were on their lands, but we were also taking over parts of lands that, you know, we were trying to stay out of people's ways. And many of these settlers, you know, they didn't want conflict. You know, you had the pilgrims coming over. They didn't want conflict and things like that. But then you had these tribes that would come in and just decimate, destroy, enslave people, freaking skin people alive, cut limbs off, bash babies' heads against, you know, posts and trees, and like the most horrific things that one human being could do to another. The Native Americans did on a pretty regular basis, not only against white settlers, but they also did them against each other. They were slavers. They took other people as slaves. They took women from other tribes. They raped them. Like the worst of the worst things that you could possibly do, they did. But we don't talk about that at all. All we talk about is, you know, they were just some peace-loving Indians out there living on the land. Like they were a bunch of hippies. They weren't.
Yeah, we have a similar thing, but we bend over way more over here to the point where this is a hardware store in Australia, right? And you go down to the bottom of the page, and a hardware store has got to say, Mitre 10 acknowledges the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians, and that's got to be capitalised for some reason, of the land on which our support centre is located. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise the continuing connection to lands, water and communities. We pay our respects to elders past and present. That's all the same kind of language that guy said. And like a lot of correspondence I've had with government for whatever things. They send an email or something, that'll always be there, something like that. It's just like, is this not Australia? Are we not all Australians? You know, is this not all of our land? You know,
like you said, we've definitely seen a big change in how people are putting up with all of this woke bullshit, and that's what all this is. Just in the last couple of years, I mean, COVID's what did it. Between COVID and all the other stuff that they were trying, all the other social nonsense they were trying to push on us, with the 47 different genders. Like at some point, everybody was just like, "All right, this is bullshit." Like, I was willing to accept X, but I'm not willing to accept this. This is a bridge too far. And it's funny, you know, I remember back in like the late 80s when the whole discussion of homosexuality became more in the media, and then in the 90s and then early 2000s, and you know, then we're starting to see things like gay marriage and things like that. And look, I am a I think that people should just be able to live however they want to live, as long as they don't push anything on us, as long as they're not hurting anyone else or anything else, right? But I remember very clearly the discussions being had during those times where it's like, yeah, but this is a slippery slope. If you start allowing homosexuality and normalizing homosexuality, well, the next thing you know, they're going to be going after kids. Next thing you know, people are going to want to change genders and all this far out stuff that at the time just seemed like a ridiculous argument. And it all came true. Like, we're seeing all of that, exactly what everybody was trying to warn us against, all of that other stuff. Now, again, if you want, look, morally, I think homosexuality is wrong. All right. I also think lying's wrong. I think a lot of things are wrong. I'm not going to judge you. And there's lots of friends that I've had that are gay, and whatever, man, go do whatever you want to do. But the moment that you start trying to, as a man with an erection, going into a women's locker room, I have a real problem with that. Or you want a 46-year-old dude that wants to pretend that he's a 17-year-old girl, be on a swim team or whatever else going on there. Like, that's where things we need to say, you know what, enough's enough. And I think most people have come to that point. It's like the sensible among us that aren't complete leftist ideologues, that are just cultists, because that's what they are.
And it probably plays into why Trump won. I think that's part of the swing back against that kind of stuff.
But yeah, no, it was huge.
You know?
I mean, I think there was a lot of reasons Trump won, but I do think that has a lot to do with it. I think there was things going on economically, politically, socially, globally. There's a lot of reasons Trump won. But I think the entire world, forget about Trump and forget about the United States, I think the entire world has had enough of this.
It's interesting though, in Australia, excuse me, we just had an election, and the left party stayed in, held on to power.
Same thing
And funny, the right wing party, they were sort of, like one of the ministers was sort of wearing I think it was just a private picture or whatever. Maybe the media blew it up or whatever, but she just had a hat saying "Make Australia Great Again" or something. And there's a couple of people in that party that was sort of siding up with Trump and talking about sort of Dodge related initiatives and stuff like that. And apparently that sort of Trump connection didn't work. Well, that's what the media's saying. Apparently, Australia at least, because we're not, we're differently politically inclined or whatever, probably more left wing or whatever. The other party trying to play like Trump supposedly didn't play well in the election, and they're trying to say that the right wing party trying to look like Trump worked against them or something. I'm not really sure. I'm not too fussed, because it's funny. Trump was asked about it, and he says, "Oh, congratulations to our leader, Albanese," and the guy that was sort of more of on Trump's side on everything. Trump even said, I don't even know the name of the other guy or something. I forget what he said, but it almost seemed like an unnecessary diss of this guy that sort of was trying to be the Trump of Australia or whatever. And Trump didn't even know his name or care to know it. But see, here's the thing. You might be thinking, oh, that's bad. You're stuck with the left or whatever. But the right-wing guy, he was horrible too. I mean, I might have my own biases, because he literally said the first one of the first things he's going to do as prime minister was talk to Netanyahu and let him know how much we love Israel. So I don't really care that he lost. Surprise, surprise. So
I do.
I'll put up with a few more welcome to countries, I guess.
I do think the Trump winning the election and some of the things that Trump did had a major impact negatively on what happened to Canada and why they ended up with the same Liberal Party that Justin Trudeau was from. I do think that suddenly there was this rebound effect of, Trump coming out and talking about the 51st. He was basically throwing some punches at Canada, mainly probably directed at Trudeau and the Liberals for some of their terrible policies. And the fact is that we in many ways do subsidize Canada. And I think he wanted to bring that to light. I just think that it probably had a negative effect that he wasn't expecting politically. And I don't really care. I mean, at the end of the day, who cares? The fact is that Canada has been headed in the wrong direction long before Trump and regardless of Trump. Now, I do think there's a lot of politicians out there that are trying to beat Trump, and they don't pull it off very well. They almost seem desperate. Trump is who he is because of who he is and because he doesn't take anything from anybody. He doesn't owe anybody anything. And, part of why he ran for president again, there was some ego in that. But the other thing is I think there's a certain sincerity with Trump that he really does feel like he's the best person to right the ship that is America. And I agree with that. I mean, there's smarter people than Trump. There's more diplomatic people than Trump. I just think Trump's the right person at the right time that can do the best job because there's too many other people out there, some of them very capable, that won't be as effective as Trump has been and will be. And there's going to be times, and there has been times where Trump has kind of shot himself in the foot. Some of his antics have not served him well or served the country well. But my God, I mean, I think his track record is much better than Biden or Obama or George H.W. Bush. I mean, objectively, I think that Trump's probably been one of the best presidents, probably the best president of my lifetime. I have an affinity for Reagan, but when I look back and I really start looking at some of the things Reagan did for gun control and things like that, if I was old enough to really understand some of the policies, I'd probably, in looking back now, looking at some of the things he passed and stood for, I think politically I would disagree with him very much so.
Yeah, we have there was some kind of oligarch or whatever, some rich guy in Australia, Clive Palmer. He started a party for this election trying to capitalize on Trump. He literally called it the Trumpet of Patriots, which doesn't even sound good. I think he just wanted to put Trump in there. And then a lot of policies were similar to Trump. But they didn't quite do it right because then one of the policies was basically like student loan cancellation or whatever. So it's like they just we'll do a populist thing, but we're not sure exactly what's popular or really have any ideological slant or whatever. And they started spamming a lot of people in the country with ads, vote for us, unsolicited, people how did he get my number? They spent a lot of money and they didn't do very well. Anyway, it's just random Australian politics. I'm not one going. He was just trying to copy Trump, this guy. He created a party called it the Trumpet of Patriots.
And that's the thing. It wasn't even so much that he was copying Trump. He was genuinely pandering because he thought Trump in general was popular amongst everybody. But then also he's kind of cherry picking these policies that Trump would never go with to garner votes. And I think that's the counterintuitive thing about populism in general is the day that, first of all, a person that really followed politics even more then, I remember when Trump first announced his presidency, I thought the whole thing was a stunt. And for the first 3 or 4 months of what was it, 2015 or 2014 or whatever it was when he first started his campaign, I was that guy saying, this guy's going to go away. There's no freaking way this guy's going to, I didn't like Trump at all. But again, the more he talked and the more that he was serious, he became popular in spite of what we were told were the popular viewpoints and policies, he turned those policies popular, right? It wasn't like he was cherry picking. Again, on the face of what he was saying, like, there's no way this guy's going to win. But the fact is, he reached in and touched people's just the way that they were thinking and seeing the world. It completely changed everybody's viewpoint of what, hey, this is what normal. We're used to this. This guy's not normal. But now that I'm looking at him, he's right. Like, we can get back to this. We can do these things. Like, you know, so, and I think that's where a lot of these politicians that are trying to imitate Trump to get votes and gain power are going wrong.
Yeah, he's sort of one of a kind. Yeah, I remember I sort of liked him when he pretty early on when he first started running. Definitely by the time he had that first debate with Megyn Kelly, tries to trip him up straight away with the first question of like, you've called women dogs, this, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, only Rosie O'Donnell. And everyone just laughs. And then he doubles down. He's like, because look, people are sick of this. While they're still clapping, he doubles down by saying, people are sick of this political correctness, blah, 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 blah. That question's a kill shot for any other politician that's running. You've called women this, that, blah, 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 blah. He turned around. I'm like, this guy's going to win. This guy's a whole different thing.
He doesn't get defensive about any of that. And he doesn't play that game. He's like, yeah, I did. And specifically who I call that was like, you're right. Nobody else would do that. Nobody that is a professional political advisor would have come up with that line. You know what I mean? Like, that is not what they would have, like, another politician, they'd sit down with, all right, they're going to tell you this is how you need to respond. Like, I think we all know that Trump doesn't do that. He doesn't sit down with political advisors. He doesn't try to freaking format his messaging a certain way or anything like that. Like, he just goes with what he thinks, and it works for him. Yeah, he's going to strike out sometime. Like, some of the things that he's doing, I think what he's doing with tariffs still remains to be seen. I still think it's the right move or the right attempt. I don't know if he always executes these things very well, but I'd rather him try and fail than not try at all. And I think we got to get America's production back in line. And I think what he's doing is exactly what needs to be done. I mean, we're just seeing the sausage being made, and we don't like it because I know it's definitely affecting our business. We have lots of different products that are going up in price. There's some products I don't have access to now because tariffs are so high. So, you know, but I'd rather that than leave my kids with a country that was a superpower and is now a third world country. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah. I mean, say what you want about Trump, at least there's a chance of him doing something. It seems like every other politician, you just get the same old just the same old thing, no real change. And it's all just political fluff that they say. At least with Trump, but yeah, he might get some things wrong, but at least he's going to try and do something. And, you know, a lot of things he does well. And as long as he just tells Israel where to go, he'll be the best president ever. You know, so we'll just have to wait and see how that plays.
Israel, he'll be okay.
No, if he listens to Israel, he'll be at war. I mean, America will be at war for another few decades if he listens to Israel, I think. So
Gary,
if he doesn't do that,
normal is the status quo, and that's the problem. Is like we've been told, and we got duped for a really long time. Like, this is how things get done. But the problem is those people saying that haven't got anything done their entire lives. Like, all we've done, there's been some politicians that have slowed the decline of the United States. Not a single politician has ever turned this country around. And we've been on decline since at least World War II or shortly thereafter. You know, we've had production going overseas and everything else. Like, we got to get that figured out because we can't sustain what's going on between the debt that we have, between, you know, one of the things that he's taken on that I didn't even think that Trump would have the balls to do that is the bureaucratic state, which is a real thing. Like, we have got to get the government bureaucracies and all these different agencies with hundreds of thousands and millions of workers that do nothing but just drain the government, drain taxpayer money, and are nothing but impediments to progress. Like, we got to get rid of them. Like, most of these agencies have 98% more people than they should, and they do nothing. And we're paying them billions and billions of dollars. I think really when you look at the U.S. government, we have, everything that we have allocated to actual welfare and social programs, but the other welfare and social program that we have is being hired and employed by the U.S. government. That's a whole nother level of social program that guarantees your retirement. You can't get fired. Like you have the best health insurance. You're making 6 figures or more. Like the biggest scam on the face of the planet are some of these agencies and just government. And I speak knowing that, having worked for a couple different agencies within the U.S. government. So it's nuts. The deep state is very real. It's very real.
Deep state Israel, he's actually saying. Israel is the deep state. That's what... Say that.
It is.
Yeah, it's right in front of us. But yeah. Anyway, tomorrow I'm for Mother's Day. Is it Mother's Day over there? Yeah, it is.
On Sunday.
Tomorrow morning it is for us. So yeah, I'm seeing Mum. I don't know if she's still here, but we're going to the cinemas. We're going to see Crocodile Dundee, the original. They're re-releasing it at the cinemas or something. So
that was the first president of Australia, right?
Hey, Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first,
he's the eternal president.
The founder of Australia.
Yeah, he's sort of like our.
I haven't watched that documentary.
He's our real monarch,
in a long time.
Sorry, you haven't seen it in a while.
I haven't seen that documentary in a really long time.
Yeah, me neither. I'll have to catch up on a bit of Australian history, so I'll do that tomorrow. Yeah.
All right. Good. Well, Chris, it was great catching up with you. Glad we did this.
Yeah, you too.
Folks, we appreciate you guys all tuning in and making this discussion even more enjoyable. If you guys ever have any suggestions for us, topics or guests or something like that, let us know. If it sounds stupid, I'm gonna put that in the old trash can pile. But if you have a good one, we will make some effort. Or if you want to suggest somebody that we should get on the podcast and interview, we can make that. We'll try to make that happen as well. So we'd like to hear from you guys. You guys are part of the show. Anyways, folks, everybody out there, all your moms, we wish you a very happy Mother's Day out there. I hope the rest of you have a great weekend. And until we come up with a Counter Media podcast slogan, until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.